Hi, it's Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec. In this video, I'll show you a fun way to create a layout using mostly scraps. And as always, I'll give you step-by-step instructions, and measurements for photos and page parts will be written on the screen. I'll be using bits and pieces left over from a Cocoa Daisy kit, and I think it was called By the Tide. It was a beachy theme. What you'll need to create this project are 2 photos, 4 or 5 different printed papers. You don't need much of that, but you do need 12-inch strips. And you'll also need some cardstock for a foundation page and photo mats. You'll need something to create a title, and if you have some decorations that coordinate with this material, throw them in as well. So this is what I'm starting with, and I created a frame style foundation and gutted the back, and that's what I used to mat my photos. Now what you see me doing is trimming those printed papers into narrow 12-inch strips, and the widths vary, and mine vary between 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 of an inch. Once that's done, I start adhering them to one side of the foundation page. There's no real recipe here. All I'm doing is making sure that no 2 identical strips find themselves side by side on this border. And I'm going to continue doing this. I am doing them side by side. I'm not overlapping the papers. And I'm going to do this until the border measures between 5 and 5 1/4 inches. Every once in a while also I'm checking in just to make sure that I'm staying straight. Not after every strip, but every once in a while. Also, what I did off camera is I made a second one of these borders, and it's simply to a piece of white cardstock. It's not going to be for the foundation page like this one. It will be for decorating the page later on. So make yourself a second border, so to speak, but you're going to cut it up later on for decorations. And that second one should have a fair amount of adhesive on it. There's my second one. So now what I'm going to do is simply rough up the edges of these strips of paper a little bit to add a bit of texture to the page. And once I do that, I'm going to start filling in that white section of the page, which is going to be the left-hand side of my page. And I'm going to fill that up with photos, a title, and a text box, and maybe a few decorations later on. Now I'm using a very large title here, and if you don't have large letters like this, I think those measure about 2 1/4 inches in height. What you can do is create a multi-word title. So if you had many words, you could stack one on top of the other. The idea here is to have fun with the title and kind of fill in that space towards the top of the page. Now, if there are spaces left, no need to worry. You can fill those in at the end of the project. So I'm going to fit those in here. And once I get those glued down, I'm going to add a title box, a text box towards the bottom of the page. Those letters, I have them on wax paper, which is always very helpful because it helps you play with placement, especially if you're going to make a multi-word title. Say I had a fun day at the beach, or a multi-word title like that. It would permit me to play around with placement, and I would be able to see through it as well. So wax paper is highly recommended. So now what I'm going to do is tuck in that journaling box at the bottom of the page, and once that's done, it's time to start decorating. I'll do my writing later on. So for decorations, the first thing I'm going to do, and you'll see that in a minute once I stop fussing, I am going to cut up that piece of paper, the other piece of paper where I adhered the strips of printed paper to. Now I'm using my Big Shot, and I'm cutting out some hearts with this, and that's why it said to use a fair amount of adhesive on that particular piece of paper that you create, because you will be cutting it out, and it will fall apart if there's not a lot of adhesive. Now, if you don't have a die cutting machine, you can punch it out with your punches. And if you don't have punches, you can cut it out with scissors. What's important here is that you create decorations with this strip of paper that you made, and make sure the lines are on the horizontal. You want them to be different than the border where the strips of paper are vertical. You'll also see me here. I'm cutting out a file tab, which I will later use on my journaling box, but we'll talk about that later. Now what I'm going to do is adhere these hearts to my border, and I put on some dimensional adhesive just to add a bit more dimension and texture to that. Now if you don't like hearts, you can cut out circles, or you can cut out flowers, or you can cut out whatever you want for this. But the idea is to create a decoration with those that strip of paper that you made. This idea for me was born out of an accident. I was kind of playing around with this technique of using strips of paper, and I made a mistake, and I didn't want to ruin, or I didn't want to throw out what I had already made, so that's why I decided to cut them up and decided to share it with you. So now what I'm going to do is fill in that spot up by the word beach. So in my decorations with that kit, I found the butt end of a tag. So I'm going to tuck that under the word B. And what I'm doing here is adding a reinforcer to that. I did that with a hole punch and a circle punch. And I'm going to add a bit of twine to that as well. So that will fill in the spot that was left at the beginning where my title begins there. And as you can see, I'm going to place that file tab at the bottom of the page on the left-hand side of the journaling box. Now, it's not necessary that you put a file tab there. You can put some decorations there. What I wanted to do there really was to repeat a color. And what I am doing is repeating the color that's the first color in my border on the right hand side, that blue diagonal stripe. Now if you don't have something to put there, you could always put a mat behind your journaling box. And now what I'm doing is I'm just using a roller date stamp to add the date that I'm going to stamp on this white paper, and then I will punch it out and put it to that file tab. If you see the washi tape there, that's an Allie Edwards date stamp, and the end of it, in order to have a blank, there's like a square there, and I can never stamp it without that square getting inked up. So what I do is I cover it up with washi tape when I put the ink on, I remove it, and then I stamp, and it works quite well that way. Just another use for washi tape. Now I'm going to finish off my page by adding some glittery enamel dots, and they came with the kit, and I still have a fair amount left, and the kit's almost finished. So what I'm doing literally is lining them up in those strips of paper in my border, and I'm just kind of sticking them in and around there in no particular recipe or order, just using them basically, and they kind of add a little bit of bling to the border, I guess. And once that's done, my page is finished. I'm going to add a few of those towards the bottom, and I will do my journaling off camera. Actually, you don't end up seeing it. I did it after I finished this video. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to Scrapbooking Quebec. I really, really appreciate the feedback. Thank you so much, and have a great day.